Powered by Rev Media in partnership with TSN. This is Season 5, and it is Episode 31 of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, who have introduced the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series, CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask. Signature CC Classic 12-year-old whiskey, finished with a secondary aging in Oloroso Sherry Cask. And Ray, for a long time, and it's not abnormal that you get to almost the midpoint of the regular season. And yeah, you have dribs and drabs of storylines, you've got teams with slow starts, but seldom do you have significant trades or mega signings. And it just happens that we have a couple of those. So we're going to bring in JP Barry from CAA Hockey, who's navigated through countless numbers of these big level negotiations, right? And we're talking about William Nylander's extension with the Toronto Maple Leafs on Monday. But he'll kind of help us understand how the player agent and the team finally get together in, the David Pastrnak 8-year, $90 million extension in Boston last March, and now William Nylander 8-year, $92 million with the Toronto Maple Leafs, because I don't know about you. I'm intrigued. Like, how do you start that? And then what does the middle look like? And then we know what the end looks like. But you've got to be a pretty patient guy to work through that.
Yeah, I think so. But I'm also curious. So the second that deal gets announced, which other agents are licking their lips to get their clients in? Because that becomes a new floorboard for the next deal. It's a fascinating look inside, I guess, and so look forward to talking to JP.
All right, well, we'll do that coming up here in the Ray and Dregs podcast. First to headlines, brought to us by Tim Hortons. For 60 years, Tim's has been supporting and loving hockey at both the community and pro levels. From partners like Sidney Crosby, Marie-Philippe Poulin, Sarah Nurse, and Nathan McKinnon, to initiatives like the Timbits Hockey Program, with over 100,000 participants across the country. Tim's is proud to be part of growing the game in Canada. Okay, let's start with a rather large hockey transaction. The trade between the Anaheim Ducks and the Philadelphia Flyers. I'd heard rumblings about the discontent of Cutter Gauthier, 5th overall draft pick of the Philadelphia Flyers in, 2022, I guess. He just, for whatever reason, didn't see Philly as a fit, didn't want to sign, wasn't even really willing to talk to Danny Briere and the Philadelphia Flyers. So Philly sends a Boston College forward to the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for 21-year-old defenseman Jamie Drysdale, who was drafted 6th overall in 2020 and a second-round pick in 2025. Ray, we don't often see players of this stature. Now, we don't know what they're going to be yet as NHL players, but players of this stature traded in a transaction like this one.
Well, the uniqueness, of course, is that Gauthier didn't want to go to Philadelphia, and there gets to be a point where, Danny Briere and the Flyers and Keith Jones, and they're in a dead end, and they're like, okay, well, they're not even returning calls, which I find rather, almost amateurish. If that's indeed the story, that why wouldn't you at least return a call and say, yeah, guess what, I'm not coming. I mean, Briere and Jones flew over to Sweden to try and talk to him and didn't get a chance to talk to him. It's a long way to go for a trip to IKEA, and they get nothing out of it. So now they've got to pivot and they've got to make this deal. And Gauthier is a really highly touted player. He's a significant asset for Anaheim to acquire and for Philly to trade. So that's going to bring back plenty. And, Drysdale's coming off a shoulder surgery. I'd heard early in the year, some kind of lower body deal. But they get a second round pick, as well. But the real chip for Philly is Drysdale. And, aside from this deal too, the next part of it is, they've got a couple of free agent defensemen in Philadelphia in Sean Walker and Nick Seeler. And certainly that would give them runway to move one of those guys or both if they want to, because you've got Drysdale in now. And pretty interesting though, like a kid just saying, nope, not for me. And that pushes the envelope to a point where they got to do something.
John Tortorella was asked post-game last night about this trade, and not unusual for Torts to display a level of disdain. And, it's not personal with Cutter Gauthier not wanting to sign or stay in Philadelphia, or it really shouldn't be. I mean, they've used him as an asset or a commodity to bring a real good piece in Jamie Drysdale back. But here was the response from John Tortorella after the game in being questioned on Cutter Gauthier.
Then we don't want you.
I believe you've met Cutter Gauthier before. Were you surprised that he...
I don't know Cutter from a hole in a wall, So, and I'm not too interested in talking about him. I'd rather talk about Jamie. He's the guy that's coming here.
Isn't that vintage Torts right there, right?
It is. And the fact of the matter is the players in the Flyers room don't know Cutter Gauthier. They, quite frankly, they don't care about him and his wants or doesn't want, I guess, in this case, because they're worried about their team. They're worried about, he doesn't want to come. They worry about it to that level, but they don't know him. Mm-hmm. So now they're worried about how soon can Drysdale get here? When can he get in the lineup? We're in third place in the Metro. Like, when we drafted Danny Heatley and then Ilya Kovalchuk in Atlanta, those are premium players.
Yeah.
We were really excited as a team because we knew that, oh my God, these guys are going to make us way better. But if one of them would have said, I don't want to come, and they would have traded them, we would have said, well, screw him. Like, I can't worry about him. I don't even know the guy. Never met him. Like, why would you care? And so that's probably what's going on in Philly today. And they're trying to figure out how quickly they can get Drysdale to wherever their next game is.
Not that it matters, but of all the organizations, Cutter Gauthier is going to play in the NHL. So his first trip back to Philly with Anaheim, man, is he going to hear it.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe he's the personality and has the swagger that he's going to feed off that. He's going to enjoy that hostile environment.
Well, he's going to hear it, whether he wants to or not. And again, from his perspective, he can't care about it. It's going to be an uncomfortable night, and that's the way it'll go. But on the Anaheim side, so Pat Verbeek he's digging into that team and in Anaheim, and they have the time to wait for Gauthier to come out of school and to get his feet under him at the pro level. There's lots of chatter about some other guys in Anaheim, whether they're going to be there for the long haul or not. And I think it's pretty clear Verbeek has got an image of how he wants that team to grow up, and that's what he's going to chase.
Okay, well, let's just focus on that for a moment, because you just tweaked something. This isn't reporting. This is just widespread speculation, because I have had a couple of teams suggest that Trevor Zegras could be in play. And it makes sense probably more to you than it does to me, because Pat Verbeek, right? And like most general managers, most coaches, he would have a style, a type of play that he feels you have to commit to have any level of success longer term. So if you're willing to comment on the speculation that perhaps at some point in the near future, Trevor Zegras is in play, does it make sense to you, or it makes no sense given the high level of talent this kid has offensively?
No, it makes sense to me, because I go back to the summer when camp started and Zegras wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And so there is the first little bump in the shins for Verbeek and Zegras, as they couldn't come to an agreement on a contract. He gets in there, and look, Zegras is not everybody's cup of joe, right? Like, he's creative, he's high risk, if you will. I think some of that'll come out of his game a little bit as he gets a little older, and he'll figure out what works and doesn't work. Like, I just don't buy why you don't like a player, I'm just saying in general, why people don't like Trevor Zegras, because he does a Michigan move or because he passes the puck over the back of the net. Like, what the hell's the difference? If I'm standing behind the net and there's a guy open in front of the net, but the net's in the way, and I'm smart enough to flip it over the net, why can't I do that?
Agreed.
So I hear, well, it's a risky play. You could miss that pass. Do you know how many passes from below the goal line to the front of the net get screwed up? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, if he works, if he is committed to getting better and growing his game, what the hell does it matter if he plays the game in a way I'm not familiar with?
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't get it. I really don't. And I don't know Trevor other than to say hi to him. But man, if the guy can play, the guy can play. But he might not be Anaheim's style, and then they'll move him along and get someone that's closer to their style. And whoever gets Zegras is going to say, yeah, we're really excited to get this creative player.
All right, the other big story on Monday was the extension announcement of William Nylander with the Toronto Maple Leafs, 8 years, $92 million. So CAA hockey agent J.P. Barry, who isn't Nylander's representative, by the way, but he's worked through a number of these deals. Recently, David Pasternak. He'll soon start on Pettersson and the Vancouver Canucks. Now, we know that Willie is a star in the National Hockey League, Ray. He was going to get paid. And just to clear things up a little bit, his ask in the offseason was $11 million. The Toronto Maple Leafs weren't willing to go to $11 million at that point. So yes, they've had to overspend here. But that's because you've got a player who's playing, to the level of being a borderline superstar in the National Hockey League. So is the bigger challenge for Brad Treliving as GM managing next season and then maybe the year after that? Because with Nylander, wasn't he more or less boxed into what this deal was going to look like?
The Leafs had no leverage whatsoever. And the way that you know that is because on every point in the deal, the checked box goes to Nylander. Salary, Nylander. Term, Nylander. No trade, Nylander. Like win, 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 win. Like there's plenty of people that I see that they're saying, well, they should have let him walk. Are you?
Please.
So you're going to let him walk and then spend the next 10 years looking for William Nylander?
Yeah.
He's young. He is in the most productive time of his year. I don't think he's going to be a 115-point guy for the next 5 years. I don't. Mm-hmm. But I think he's a premium player, like a premium player, and you're going to have to pay for it. So the trick is, next year, you've got a lot of money tied up in the four guys.
Yeah.
Can you move off of one of those deals? Maybe, maybe not. Then you get to Marner's unrestricted free agent year. Then you got a really big decision to make. But what's apparent is letting these guys walk to their free agent year is not a good strategy.
No.
Because you lose, at least in my opinion, you lose at least one of the levers that you might be able to pull as a team.
Yeah. And really, now we're going to see the fingerprints of Brad Treliving on the Maple Leafs, right? He inherited the contract extensions of Matthews and William Nylander. Not a lot of trade capital. He's got his first-round pick. He's got Easton Cowan. He's got Fraser Minton. But Minton and Cowan may have to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs next year on entry-level contracts. You're going to have to go with Joe Woll and cheaper goaltending just to comply with the salary
but if
cap.
I think the goaltending becomes less of an issue the tighter you get to the cap. And the reason I think that is because you've got to allocate your dollars to the guys that skate in front of the goalie every night. You need to build a better defense. You need to build some depth at forward, and you only have so many dollars to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's if you have really great players, high performing, high production players, you're going to get boxed in.
Yeah.
Like you are. By the way, what do you think Elias Pettersson and J.P. Barry and Leon Draisaitl, and I don't know who represents him, what do you think they were thinking yesterday?
Oh, I mean, it's another marker. Of course.
And so, like, the Leafs, because they take up so much air and because the deal is just fresh from yesterday, everybody's trying to figure this out 14 ways from Tuesday. But there's a lot of teams that just went, oh, damn, what are we going to do? Because it's going to happen to them too.
For sure.
Oh, by the way, Pettersson threw 4 points up last night.
Not bad. Yeah, not bad.
Madison Square 2-2. Canucks go in and win, and he was brilliant.
He's gonna be a bigger number than Nylander.
Yeah.
8 teams ready with 50 or more points as we approach the midpoint of the NHL regular season. At the top of the league, we see the Winnipeg Jets, who have won 6 in a row to overtake first place overall in the National Hockey League. Is it fair to call it a surprise? And if it is fair to call the Winnipeg Jets atop the NHL as a surprise, what's most surprising about how well they've played to this point of the year?
Well, I think the most surprising part of it for me is coming from where they were early in the summer to where they are now. It seemed like they were teetering on, oh boy, they're going to have to rebuild the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which nobody ever really wants to do. But just go back, they let Wheeler go. They trade Dubois in that huge trade with LA, which has turned out to be this far a grand slam for them. They get Scheifele and Hellebuck signed. Rick Bowness comes back after a less than smooth departure to the playoffs last year when he went at the team pretty hard. And yet they play like an elite team. Mm-hmm. And they're putting this streak together without Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor's a hell of a player.
Yeah.
Like I think they are now, well, they are at 29 straight games under 3 goals against. 29 straight. Everybody else in the league has given up 4 and 5 goals all over the place, and they just don't.
Yeah.
They're kind of like big, and the players they got from LA kind of fit that sort of style, and they're heavy and they're hard to play against, and they can score. I mean, they're legit. This isn't a 2-month run in the middle of the season. This is a legit team.
Yeah, and when Kyle Connor comes back, and he's on that point, from the point of injury with the knee sprain, 6 to 8 weeks. But they feel like that'll almost seem like a big trade. Because he played like 3, maybe 4 games with Gabe Vilardi. Yep. And they saw a little bit of chemistry there. So they're salivating at the idea of those 2 guys, knock on wood, being healthy and getting some time together and seeing how that works out. So maybe the best is yet to come in Winnipeg.
Well, coming from where they did this summer, Dregs, I think it's a remarkable story. And when you're talking about, here we are I guess we're just about the midway point across the league, but Rick Tocchet, Rick Bowness, they have to be at the very top of Coach of the Year midseason candidates. I mean, the 2 of them have done remarkable jobs.
So let's have a bit of fun here and look at, the Canadian group of 4. So Winnipeg, Vancouver, Edmonton, the Toronto Maple Leafs, largely all playing well, right? I mean, Edmonton had the slower start. Toronto had a somewhat mild setback, but they seem to be back on track. Which of those 4 do you think right now is the strongest Stanley Cup contender?
I have great faith in the Edmonton Oilers. I picked them at the start of the year. They've won 100. They've won 100 in a row to get to a playoff spot here. So they're in Chicago tonight. Unless they forget their skates, this is going to be 8 wins in a row for them tonight. You should see my my prep sheet for the Chicago Blackhawks tonight. It looks like my grandson did it. I got names crossed out all over the plates, and I don't even know what number what number's Rem Picklett wearing today? I got no idea. I got to figure that one out. But it just, so this will be 2 winning streaks of 8 in a row this year. The last time that was done in a year was 84, 85 by a particular team. The play of Stu Skinner and Cal Pickard, for that matter, has allowed Edmonton some more time to buy cap space because they don't need another goalie right now.
Right.
They just don't. Pickard's done a really nice job. He's got a .904 save percentage. He's been fine. Skinner's been terrific. McDavid, Nugent-Hopkins, and Zach Hyman are off the charts. They're the best line in the league right now. And they'll have room to add a piece or two. I would say Edmonton. I would say Winnipeg. I like them. I always hesitate when I get to Vancouver because I don't want people to think that I'm, like I'm so biased with Cammie working in management.
Yeah, but they're legit. We can all see that.
But I keep watching and I'm like, yeah, but they win again. And they win in a different way all the time.
Yeah. And
so I think Vancouver's a bigger problem than might be thought of around the league.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I guess I'm doing a really good job of not answering your question. But I've been really impressed with how the Leafs are winning. I really have been. Like, Marty Jones has been terrific in goal, but he hasn't had to be over the top spectacular 40 saves and all that stuff. And that means the team in front of him is doing a really good job. But I don't think Toronto's built for the long haul. Something about it just doesn't quite feel right to me. And I have the other three teams in front of them for sure.
Okay.
For me anyway, at this point, where are we at? Game 41 for most of the teams. That's kind of where I'm at today.
Yeah, I hear you. And I mean, look, the West is loaded with good, high quality teams. I think of course, Vegas, I think of Dallas, I think of Colorado, go down the list, but I can envision the Toronto Maple Leafs, say, playing the Florida Panthers in the first round. And if you're paying attention to what Florida is doing, that could end poorly for the Maple Leafs.
That's
right?
7 in a row for the Panthers again. Like when you go down here, so Vegas has dropped, right? I just looked. They got 3 wins in their last 10 games.
Yeah.
And it's been a lousy stretch for them. Yet nobody should even consider thinking they're not a great team.
Agreed.
It's just a lousy stretch in the middle of the season.
Yeah. And they knew they were going to hit it, right? They're
going to get Aiden Hill back here too, which will help them out. Yeah. It gives them back goalie duo that they liked. But man, there is no easy road, man. Everybody wants the definitive answer. Who's the best team? Who's going to win this and who's going to win the division? And there's just no road that's easy.
You're right, my friend. Those are your headlines. Thank you to Tim Hortons.
For 60 years, we've been beside you, loving hockey. Through the highs, the lows, and everything in between. The game's come a long way, and together we can take it further.
Our interviews on Ray and Dregs are brought to us by Canadian Club Whiskey, who have introduced the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask. All the hallmarks of classic Canadian Club with the added richness and sweetness of sherry. All right, we're now joined on the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast by JP Barry of CAA Hockey. And JP, you are no stranger when it comes to putting together, negotiating these mega type of contracts. And the William Nylander contract, who, by the way, you're not the agent for Nylander, so we bring you in on the podcast just to provide a little context as to how these deals come together. But you did navigate through the David Pastrnak extension last March, 8 years, $90 million. So take us through the cadence. I mean, the back and forth between yourself and management as you gently try and nudge the process along from beginning to end.
Yeah, we all know in the salary cap era now, it's really difficult, especially these larger contracts. And, it all starts with where's the market, where's the market now and where's it going and what are the main comps? And, at the beginning of that negotiation, I mean, we had a pretty big, we had comps at the very high end in the $12 million range, and we had comps in the $7 to $8 million range. And like any team, they're going to try and push towards, is there anything we can grab onto in the bottom range? And we're going to find the key ones. And with patience, as we know, like more comparables come forward and directly impact the situation. I think on Pastrnak, McKinnon had some impact on it of a newer deal. And Deadlines matter. So we got right down to the trade deadline or close to it or within a month of it. And it was a long negotiation. It was 6 to 8 months.
When you're dealing with David Pastrnak as opposed to some other client, what are guys' appetites for being patient? Like as soon as you said that word, I went, oh boy, because I'm assuming it's all over the board.
Yeah, it is. It depends on the player but oftentimes players have a pretty good idea of like who at least the 3 or 4 players they really feel strongly about that they're close to. If they're wrong, it's our job to tell them they're wrong because they can be wrong. Like some guys have too much expectation, but once we kind of delve in, and then obviously we have to project, like we have to see what's the cap next summer. Like the team wants to negotiate on last year's cap, and sometimes just by waiting alone, I think for Nylander, the fact that the jump was going to be $4 million instead of $1 million, which was in our case, then that helps create some momentum. And obviously, just like Pastrnak, Nylander's had a terrific season. So I mean, when your client goes into a contract season and basically is leading the league in many categories and playing like that, it sure makes the agent look good.
Well, when you start talking though, is it what's the first domino to attack? Is it term? Is it kind of the ballpark $1?
It's term.
Like which is first?
You got to know term. Like these guys, especially these younger players, you need to know what the term is going to be because especially when we're dealing with those players in their early 20s, like how much free agency are you giving up and how long a commitment is this? So term is always first. I mean, with these, when a player's 27, 28, I think we're all going to know they're going to want 8 years for the most part. Like they've earned their right to get there unless they see the cap is going to go up a lot. I mean, if the cap, the last several years it's not, but if you can start making those cap projections, then yes, you can go 2, 3 years, 3 years. But generally a forward who's 27 or 28, and Ray, you were there, you're a little bit worried about declining performance, and so is the team.
Sure.
So I think 8 years becomes a little easier to do at that age when they're approaching their late 20s.
The one thing that kind of grabbed me by surprise, of course, not in it anymore in the same way as when negotiating my own contract, is when Matthews went to 5 years and the realization that it's not just about 8 years. When you're at a certain age and a certain stature, and some of the clients you have, JP, a shorter deal might very well be the best deal for that guy.
Yeah, you have to talk to each player. I mean, that was a discussion with Pastrnak also. He thought about 5-6 years, and then he leaned towards 8 after we reviewed everything. And I think Matthews, again, feels strongly about himself. I think that deal, I have a feeling that was a good number for the team and the player. Like sometimes they both get together and say, I think 5 years for Toronto, they're probably thinking they got to do something in the next 5 years, or their cap has to change. I think Matthews was thinking the same way. So I think if you get both sides thinking that a 5-year deal makes more sense, then that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, term and the annual average salary are critical elements to any deal. I mean, that's the end game when you get there and you have an agreement, and then you've got the no trades, the no moves, and the heavy signing bonus structure and whatnot. But we're talking more and more, JP, about percentages now. Yeah. Cap percentages. Yeah. So if we use Nylander as an example, his percentage of 87.7, which is the salary cap next season, is 13.11% of the Maple Leafs salary cap. Why does that matter?
It started not long after the cap. I mean, we started presenting this argument back it was Chicago with Taves and Kane and some others, and it became clear to us that the teams were actually using this, and they were denying it. They did not want to get into a cap percentage type argument, and it took us, but we didn't stop. Like our presentations all broke it down that way. And obviously, the cap percentage is going to start at the number you just talked about, Darren, but it's going to, if the cap moves forward, then it's going to become even more of an ability for the team to absorb that number. So we had a lot of resistance on this cap percentage analysis rather than using the actual contracts. But when you're looking at contracts from 2 and 3 different years with 2 and 3 different cap years, you can't compare an 8 to an 8, if the cap is different. So obviously mathematically the percentage makes more sense from a negotiation standpoint. And these days the teams don't really blink. They know they use it, and they know we're not gonna stop using it. So it's relevant. It's relevant, and that way you can compare a contract that's 5 years old to a contract now, whereas you can't do that on the salary.
I just was thinking about, so the contract's rolling along, you're starting to negotiate, you get some headway. There must be a few times in a deal like Pasternak's, of course, because I'll use as an example, is where you have to hang up the phone and go and kind of check frustration. I assume in every big deal there's got to be moments like that. How do you regroup and find a new avenue to re-engage?
I mean, I think everybody's different. Like our style is, and my particular style is I try not to make a negotiation personal ever. I never have. It's not something I mean, obviously people will get frustrated. I don't take it the wrong way. I don't think they take it from me the wrong way. So, I mean, we did have a breakdown in Pasternak around Christmas. I mean, I think the team was dead set on having a contract somewhere around 10 maximum. And when it became clear that we weren't going to take 10, there was a breakdown, and it took a few weeks, and I had to travel to Boston and see everyone, and sort of everyone had to talk it out and get through it. And so, yeah, there was this eventually need for a face-to-face meeting. Like, it's interesting, back 5-6 years ago, all these big meetings were face-to-face, but now there's a lot being done, whether it's Zooms, whether it's email. So at the end of the day, when things aren't going well and maybe an owner needs to get involved and needs to express himself, or like all the management needs to be in one room to talk about what happened, a face-to-face meeting is sometimes the only way to break through. Well,
at the end of the day, there's still 100% in the cap, right? So if William Nylander's got 13.1 and Tavares has this and Marner and Matthews have that, eventually you run out of percentages. So you've got one of those other players, anybody, Joe Schlabotnik is a good friend. Donnie Taylor always uses a guy that doesn't exist. What do you do with those guys? What do you like? Because they want what they earn. Yet sometimes their percentages just aren't there. JP, how do you navigate through those guys?
It's a problem because, I mean, I think it comes down to every team's philosophy too. Like, I think we all know here that you really can't win in hockey without, I think, 10 to 12 core players eventually. Like, everyone can talk about the core 4, the 6, but it's not like basketball. Like, you do need a certain number of players, like the football, I think, to win. And the hard part about this cap is that the squeeze is on, and it's hitting those. And now that we have younger players getting very large contracts, the squeeze is hitting that middle tier player who's a very good player. And if they're not quite needed in that system, if they are, then they can get a long-term deal and they can work it out in a lower number. But a lot of them are the victims of the squeeze. Like, we're going to bring a young player in, and I know he's not as good, but he's going to take that role because of the number. And the more these kind of contracts stack up, I think we all know that where the squeeze is. The squeeze is going to happen to the veteran, at usual, unfortunately, forward, I see more than anything, and then the 6, 7, 8 defensemen. So we're seeing this, and that's what's going to happen in Toronto. I mean, they're going to have to fill that lineup with, and that's, I think, has been the challenge. Can Toronto win? Can they fill the lineup with the right kind of players at that level?
What do you think when you're sitting there and you're watching the other sports and other news and you see a deal like Shohei Ohtani roll across the ticker? Like, what? Like, we can't even fathom that. Can you even imagine coming up with a percentage of deferred money that looks like that?
That's our agency was involved, and I know the agent really well, and he went
crazy.
He went underground a few months ago, so I still haven't had a chance to talk to him about how that all played out, and especially I'm extremely curious about the deferred money, and obviously there's a massive taxation issue. As soon as I saw it, there's some kind of international taxation reason for Ohtani, to do that. And obviously I heard he's got, a lot of money coming in on marketing revenue also, which, we don't have that level of marketing revenue in hockey, but yeah, I mean, no, Ray, I mean, there's, people in our sport, there's other agents that constantly complain about the cap. I mean, I don't love it. We have to deal with it. It's there. And the reality is that, other than a labor negotiation, yes, that can take place and that can change things. But our cap, it's kind of interesting. Like the player salary cap of, our top teams is still not where the Detroit Red Wings were when they stacked that team. So I think we all remember that was probably the peak level of the salary cap, was that Red Wing team that we can see what it was. I mean, it had 12 Hall of Famers on it. But that's the path we're on right now. And I think, we have to, but we also have something really interesting. We have a 20%, we have a percent number in our CBA. It's 20%. And it's in the CBA. So the percentage of the cap has been laid out as a part of the CBA is the maximum that a player can take or in a deal. And no hockey player has tried to push that. And I think the reason why is they all want to win. Up to now, these players realize that at where the cap is right now at 20%, you can't really win. So
do you think we'll see it though? I mean, you've said that you do.
I mean, it's going to happen. It's a number. It's a benchmark. Nylander just, even though you mentioned the percentage is less than Pasternak, the number is higher. Yeah. So every player that moves forward, like the Pasternak deal is now old. It's the Nylander deal, right? Yeah. So,
who are we talking?
But 20% is a forced trade.
Who are we talking about? Who could that
be? We should bring Ryan Rishaug in this and get his view on it.
Are we talking about McDavid and Draisaitl? No. Okay.
Of course not.
But my point is, you're almost forcing a trade at that point, though, aren't you? Just based on the construct of what an NHL team is.
Yeah, I mean, right now there's just very few teams. The only team that's going to actually step up and be able to lure a player with 20% is going to be a bottom market team. Yeah. It's not going to be a top market team. It's going to be someone at the bottom that decides they're going to have to change their franchise for whatever reason and is going to bring in a player to do that. That's the only scenario I see is someone right now who's at the bottom.
Right. Well, your guy could be next man up, Pettersson with the Vancouver Canucks. And, you're probably not going to share a whole lot, but you said something earlier, where you would meet with your client and you'd say, okay, well, here are your term options. Here's what I'm looking at. Here are your comps, right? You would do that with the player first before engaging with Canucks management or management period. And has that process started for you on Pete?
Yeah, it started. We have more to do. I mean, he really wanted to, this guy really wanted to focus on playing. He's not an unrestricted free agent like Nylander was, like Pasternak was. There is another year there. I know people in Vancouver don't want to hear that. He could feasibly do a 1-year contract or do an arbitration case for 1 year, and no one wants that. But he's, so, I think patience, obviously sometimes we are being patient. I mean, there's no doubt people have pointed that out. Are we being over patient? But, we're getting to the point now where we'll have to sit down. I think he's had a great season. I think he's done everything that he wanted, but he wants this team to win too. So he doesn't like the distraction. So we have to balance whether or not we think engaging is a distraction or not. And a lot of that comes down to what the client wants. Could this all be done now quietly, or can we wait and do all of it in June or, May and June? So that's what we have to talk about.
All right. Fascinating stuff. Ray, don't you wish the dollars were there back in your day when you could have these conversations with high-profile agents like J.P. Barry or Steve Bartlett?
Hey, JP, I got to tell you, every time somebody, I'll call him a mid-range player, signs for $4 million, Eric Brewer sends me a text, and he says, "Hey, don't you wish you were playing today? How many sheets would you make?" Sends it every time.
Wasn't it the same thing when the guys in the 90s started doing deals? The guys in the 70s were like,
yeah, for sure. And I'm like, it would be nice.
All right.
JP, thanks for your time. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you guys. Anytime.
Yeah, all the best in your travels. Well, Ray, JP Barry, our guest this week on the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast. And these guys are highly intelligent human beings. I appreciate that. What I have a higher appreciation for is the level of patience. You and I aren't the most patient human beings,
No.
especially when it comes to the business side of things. Maybe you were as a player. I don't know.
No.
But to go through the chess game that you have to go through and then manage your client on top of that. Now, we focused on Nylander and Pasternak, who are very similar in personality, right? You know, hey, you're my agent. Go work through all of it and let me know when you need me to weigh in. And normally that's at the beginning and then near the end. But what a process it has become now with these crazy deals with signing bonus and no moves and no trades and everything that goes into it.
Yeah, the one part you could think, why would it be stressful? Because you're going to make 9 or 10 million or whatever it's going to be, and you're going to be fine. Yet it's your life, and it and it does become stressful.
Sure.
I wouldn't. This is where every player is a little different. I wouldn't be saying, okay, let's talk about it in June. Like if I'm coming into the last year of my contract, I want to do it. I want to finish it. And maybe I lack the self-confidence to go ahead and, to do what Nylander did or what Pettersson is doing right now. I certainly wasn't the players that they were, but, I probably could have been more patient a couple of times. Like as I look back at it.
Yeah.
But that's easy to say from here, not while you're in it. And so that's where the agent is, he's got to take stock of what his player is. He's got to understand what the player's appetite is for the risk involved. Because some guys have it and some guys don't. I didn't. And my agent was Steve Bartlett and he knew it. Yeah. And there were a lot of times I know he didn't really listen to what I had to say because he knew that I was impatient. And he kind of calmed the water a little bit. And again, he had to know what I didn't. And for me, he was a fantastic agent and was for a lot of people. And JP has to navigate that with each client because they're all different.
Yeah. Interesting part of the business. And there are some big deals coming down the path, right? We've talked about the Leafs earlier in the podcast. You've got Tavares, you've got Marner coming. The game you're doing tonight, the Oilers and the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, you have Draisaitl, going into the final year of his deal next year. And then McDavid is right after that. So it definitely feels like as long as Ray and Dregs is around, we're probably going to have the odd agent on occasion just to make sure we can understand some of the structures of these mammoth contracts.
Well, there's going to be no shortage of them. And of course, the complication becomes that you got to fit it into the cap. And I don't love the cap. I wish there was a mechanism to draw out a franchise player.
Yeah, you've talked about that. Yeah.
Just to give a little more flexibility. I don't want it to be like baseball where you've got 8 teams that can win and the other 24 are running around on the grass all summer. Like that's no good either. And so I would like to see a little more flexibility in it, but that's for the next CBA.
What's stressing you out right now? It certainly isn't the game. It's the pending storm that may hit Chicago. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, I got to get to Pittsburgh tomorrow.
All right.
So
dog sled an option or no?
No, it looks good right now. It looks like what could go wrong, right? But if people have ever flown through Chicago, which most have, the weather can be fine. And then by the time you get to the airport, it's crap and you're stuck. Yeah. So, trying to get out to Pittsburgh. So busy week in Chicago today, in Pittsburgh for Vancouver on Thursday, and our first ABC game on Saturday afternoon, the Rangers in Washington. It's 1:00 Eastern on Saturday.
Yeah, you are busy. You talked about how busy this week was going to be, man. You're loaded for beer.
So what about you? Easy week, and then all of a sudden, not easy week.
Yeah, not so easy anymore. No. Yeah, Tuesday we're recording here. We've got the Sharks and the Toronto Maple Leafs regionally tonight. And then, perhaps the highlight of the week, I've been invited to guest with Jay Onright as part of the aftermath. I don't know. He's always got shenanigans in play. There's always
I saw him
something
the
other
other
than
day.
hockey.
He was going with the turtleneck.
Yeah, I know.
That was it. You please ask him about that.
I will. I'm not a turtleneck guy. I don't think I could pull it off.
No,
you need a tall, long neck, and
there's no way.
Yeah.
That's not happening for me. No chance.
All right. Well, I'll pass along your best wishes. In the meantime,
Please do.
Safe travels.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you later in the week.
You bet. Thanks to our sponsors who continue to support us here on Ray and Dregs, our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, and of course, Tim Hortons. And yes, thank you for rating, for listening, for sharing, and for following us on the Ray and Dregs YouTube channel as well. Until Thursday, stay safe, everyone.